But nonetheless, I still pinned all my faith, all my hopes on Uncle Juan. To me, to everyone, he was the one person who could bring us through somehow. He led us on, even deeper into the hills, and from the top of every pass we saw always more hills, higher hills, lost in the clouds. And still the rain came. On we trudged. As if we went, others joined us, more freedom fighters, more refugees, till our 50 was nearly 200. One afternoon we came out of the woods into a narrow valley with a river running through. The rain stopped and suddenly the sun warmed our backs and lifted our spirits. I remember we were singing as we came down into the valley. We saw ahead of us a cluster of farmhouses in a clearing, but it seemed as if the place was deserted. From out of the houses there appeared one by one at first, then in twos, then threes, and then in their dozens, fearful, bedraggled and pale. But as they recognised who we were, as they realised we were friends, their faces lit up, and they came running. Uncle Juan and the freedom fighters were greeted like conquering heroes. Stranger hugged stranger, friends found friends. Bound by common sufferings, strangers became friends. We wept out of sheer joy that we were together and that we were alive. Almost at once the talk was of the Black Phantom. Everyone knew of him, but only I knew who he was. Only I knew he was Paco. Every time I heard the name, the Black Phantom, I felt so sure it was him, so certain that one day Paco and I would meet again. I was making my way through the crowd of people, walking Chica down to the river for a drink, when I saw a girl standing in front of me, gaping at me, wide-eyed. Maria! It was Maria! How long we clung to each other and cried together, I do not know. And mother and father, I asked her. But she shook her head and walked me to the river. There on the riverbank, as Chica drank her fill, she told me what had happened, how when I couldn't be found that morning, she'd been sent out to find me. Then how the planes had come and the house had been hit. She'd run back, but there was nothing she could do. The house was ablaze. She couldn't get near it. She had looked for me everywhere, called for me, and the pigs and the goats and the chickens were running everywhere in a wild panic, and all the time the planes were bombing, strafing. All she could think of was getting away. So she ran, and she'd wandered the woods for days before meeting a charcoal burner who had fed her and cared for her, and brought her here to hide up in the hills with all the others. They'd been here for weeks and weeks, she said, but there was very little food to go around, and they were all terrified that the Guardia Civil might come. You won't have to worry about that anymore, I told her, because Uncle Juan is here with his soldiers, and they'll look after us. Uncle Juan is here, she cried, and then she saw him and went running to him, throwing herself into his arms. The three of us, Uncle Juan, with an arm around each of us, sat together that night, and we talked under the stars. After a while, we fell silent, each of us wrapped in our own thoughts. That was the moment Maria asked me the question I'd been dreading. You never told me, Antonito. Where were you when the planes came? I looked everywhere. The lie I'd prepared came out easily. I got up early and took Chico for a ride. I wanted to see Paco. Then I heard the planes, and Chico just bolted. I couldn't stop her. I tried, but she galloped off into the hills, and I just clung on. Oh, thank God she did, and thank God you went for a ride that morning, said Maria. If you hadn't, then we'd both be dead like mother and father. Uncle Juan drew us closer. I've decided, he whispered. You take Chica and you go tonight. Now. Why? I asked him. Because we're too many here. There's not enough food to go around, because sooner or later we'll be discovered and we'll have to fight. We will fight, and we'll fight as well as we can. But we are few, and they are many. I don't want you to be here when this happens. Maria tried to interrupt. No arguments, Maria. I've thought it all through. It's the only way. I want you to go to Malaga, to my mother's house. You've been there, Maria. You'll find the way. Kiss her for me, Antonito, and look after her. Be a son to her. Will you do that for me? Yes, I said. Follow the river down into the valley. You'll join the road there. The Guardia Civil won't harm you. Your children. They have children of their own. He led us to where Chica stood, white in the moonlight. He held us for a moment, kissed us on the forehead, then picked us up one by one and sat us astride Chica. Go with God, he whispered, and he rode away and we rode away along the river bank and left him there. We kept turning in the saddle to see him until the darkness took him from us and we were alone. We did see soldiers, lots of them, but luckily they ignored us. Several times the Guardia Civil stopped and questioned us. Maria told them we were visiting our great aunt in Malaga, and each time they nodded us through. Wherever we stopped for the night, people fed us and gave us shelter. If I learned one thing on that last journey, and while hiding in the hills with the refugees, it was that men and women have a capacity for kindness as great, if not greater, than their capacity for evil. When at last, after many days' travel, we reached Malaga and Uncle Juan's house, I set about doing what my Uncle Juan had told me. I kissed his mother and made myself a son to her. Together, Maria and I looked after her. I think she knew all along that Uncle Juan would not be coming home. She was strong and proud in her grief. We never did discover what happened to him. Like so many thousands of others in the Civil War, he just disappeared. But he's not forgotten. Not forgotten either was the Black Phantom. Even in Malaga, in my new school, they had heard of him. There were stories of how he had been seen wandering the streets at night in Cortez, bellowing defiance, or spotted by a shepherd in the hills outside Jerez. Even in the castle keep at Guthine, he had surprised a column of soldiers, hundreds strong, near Cortez and put them to flight and chased the Guardia Civil officer through the streets of El Colmenar. Even as a boy, I knew the stories couldn't all be true, though I hoped they were. Of course, but the Black Phantom's survival and the tales of his triumphs kept hope alive, even in the depths of our despair. As the war was lost, I kept in my heart the hope that one day I might see Paco again. But as time passed, it became only the faintest of hopes, based on a story I only half believed. Great Aunt Nina was as good a mother to me as an old lady could be. And I had Maria, your great Aunt Maria, who was always my soulmate, my great protector and my dearest friend. She still is. A few years later, I would have been 19 or 20 by then, I had a job cutting cork in the forests near Maracha. I was on my own and tired after a long day's work, and I'd made myself a small fire, and after supper I laid down beside it to sleep. Mules hobbled nearby. I fell asleep easily, and then I dreamed, a strange dream, that Paco was laying there beside me, chewing the cud, licking his nose. He was so close I could smell his milky breath. I woke. Paco wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. It had been a dream. But as I got to my feet, I noticed the grass nearby had been flattened. I felt it and it was warm. And then I saw hoof marks, the marks of a massive bull. Paco had found me. We had found each other at last. The Black Phantom was no phantom. I called and called for him, but he never came. For years after that, whenever I worked the cork forests, I'd look out for Paco, even though I knew it was quite impossible he could still be alive. But it didn't matter. Once was enough. I was a happy man. My grandson's eyes had not left my face throughout the entire story. But after I'd finished, he seemed to think there should be more. That was really the very worstest thing, he asked. He sounded a little disappointed. Didn't you ever break any windows? Can't remember, I said. I expect so. The front door opened and I heard his mother's voice. I'm home, she called out. Antonito leapt off the bed. Secret, Antonito, I said. Secret, abuelo, he smiled at me. And he was gone out of the room. By the time I reached the top of the stairs, he was in his mother's arms, clinging to her. I'm sorry, Mum, he cried. I'm really sorry. He looked up into her face. Mum, we won't ever be in a war, will we? Of course not, Antonito. And you won't die, will you? You won't die? Not for a while, I hope, she replied. And then she saw me standing there. Abuelo, what has brought this on? I shrugged. Who knows, I said. Who knows what goes on in the mind of a child? The end.